What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Fantasy Flex Podcast. I am your host, Chris Raybon, and I am joined by one of the best fantasy football rankers on the planet, and Sean Koerner. And today, we are going to talk all about the top 12 quarterbacks. If you have not listened to our late round quarterback episode already, we have it up right now. It's featuring none other than Mr. Late Round Quarterback himself, JJ Zacharyson. So be sure to check that out. Also, be sure to leave us a review on Apple, and we will choose our favorite 5-star review on next week's episode, as we've been doing every week. And you'll get a free year of Action Pro. So you'll get our rankings all season long, all that good stuff. So be sure to leave us a review if you like the pod. But Sean, what's going on?
What's up, bud? Oh, we're getting closer. Training camp's underway. Next week, we get our first preseason game with the Jaguars and Raiders. Are you getting excited or what?
I am. I'm also, I feel like good things are happening this offseason. Like a few players that we were kind of concerned about coming into into camp look to be doing better than expected. I see that Chris Godwin's been cleared. Michael Thomas just came off the PUP list as well. So I'm kind of liking this. Hasn't been as doom and gloom as some of these camps.
Yeah, it helps, taking the guessing game out of it. In like May and June, we're just kind of guessing these guys might be ready by week 1, but it's good to start seeing, guys in pads and practicing and getting more clarity on everybody's injury situation.
Yeah, now we just got to hope, knock on wood, that we don't get a bunch of training camp ACL tears and all that to just throw everything.
Football is a pretty savage sport, so unfortunately I think we do have to prepare for things like that.
I'm prepared. I'm just hoping. I mean, we don't usually get guys that we think are gonna be out coming off the PUP that's like 2 months early, so it's already been a good sign. But hopefully we keep it up. Hopefully. All right. So this episode we're gonna run through the top 12 quarterbacks by ADP. We'll be doing this all training camp long, all preseason long. We'll go through each position. We'll have a bunch of guests on as well, as we usually do this time of year. But for this one, it's just us. We're going to run through these top 12. Let's start at the top with Josh Allen. He's going as the QB1, 25th overall. So usually going in the early third rounds. If you're in a smaller league, you could be going a little in different spot, but you generally the early third, sometimes the late second. Sean, Josh Allen, I mean, I think I always start with the question of just like, what is the earliest you'd take him?
Yeah, I mean, I personally don't like to be the first person drafting a quarterback. But this year, Josh Allen could be the exception. He's clearly the number one quarterback. I have him in a tier all by himself. He's finished as the QB1 overall the past 2 seasons. I would consider him, a heavy favorite to do it again this year. So realistically, I think once the top 13 to 15 running backs are off the board, the top 9 to 10 wideouts, I think, wide receiver 11 through 20 is about the same in my projections. So there's a giant tier between those 2 tiers. And, the top 2 tight ends are off the board. I think that's when I'd be okay drafting him. So that's between 24 and 27 overall, which is right where he's going. If you look, Patrick Mahomes isn't too far behind. It looks like he's going 30th overall, but I have Mahomes all the way down closer to number 55 overall, and he's my QB2. So I just think the market's probably not appreciating the gap between Allen and tier 2 as much as, I would. So I think that if there were ever a year to consider taking Allen or taking a QB first overall, it'd be Allen this year. That's going to be round 3 too. So if you can get solid running back, solid receiver, I guess I'd be okay drafting, the first quarterback. But in general, that's not my QB strategy. But I'm just saying Josh Allen could be the exception this year.
Yeah, his season-long props, 4,400 yards, 35.5 touchdowns, 11.5 interceptions. He's also got 550 rushing yards, 6.5 TDs. So, as you can see, those are kind of, elite level props right there for a quarterback. But I am curious as to There are tiny little things, when you're spending a premium pick like this, you got to kind of cover the pros and the cons of it. So I think some questions I guess I would have are, number one, do you think how do you kind of rate his supporting cast? And when I say supporting cast, I mean, not only the receivers, but even the offensive coaching staff around him. Like they did lose Brian Daboll. They also lost Emmanuel Sanders and Cole Beasley. They get Jamison Crowder, but now like Davis bumps up one. So that's like the first time that he's really going to be the number 2. And then the 4 is still, now it's kind of like, I think it's going to be McKenzie, who's a little different of a player than a guy like Sanders or even a guy like John Brown. And McKenzie's kind of bumping up one, and you got Khalil Shakir, the rookie. So any concern there just with maybe a slight drop off in terms of the supporting cast? They also got James Cook, which is an improvement.
Yeah. So first off, last year I was super high on Josh Allen because they brought back the entire coaching staff. I guess they went too far in the playoffs. They missed out. Brian Daboll missed out on that hiring season, but with Daboll,
how dare you say they went too far in the playoffs? They did not go far enough in the playoffs. Yeah,
I'm talking about 2 years ago. Last year. I'm not even trying to provoke those memories, that horrific night. But no, I was saying 2 years ago. But yeah, so now with Brian Daboll gone, that is a slight concern. At least, they're hiring from within. I think Ken Dorsey should keep the offense pretty consistent from what we've seen under Brian Daboll. So I think that's going to help. That helps quell my fears a little bit. And in terms of the surrounding talent around Josh Allen, I would say it's better this year. Obviously, losing Cole Beasley and Manny Sanders doesn't look great, but if you consider the fact that Gabe Davis is going to have more playing time over, Manny Sanders last year, I think that's an upgrade. You could argue, Jamison Crowder is an upgrade over Cole Beasley. I would say that's probably a wash. But this Isaiah McKenzie role in the background, I think having a guy like James Cook potentially, take over that role definitely helps Josh Allen. I think the rookie Khalil Shakir, I think people are sleeping on him. I think he's sneaky as well. So I think they do have these ancillary pieces that, at least one of them could pop off. And I love Dawson Knox. So I think he still has, legit tight end and Knox. So I think the surrounding talent around Allen is probably a little bit better this year, which is hard to believe. So, I think all consider, I think we should expect Allen to be a little bit better this year. I think we'll also see the same rushing upside. I'd be concerned maybe in 2 to 3 years when Allen starts to be more of a pocket passer, he won't have that, elite rushing upside, but I think we're going to get to see that for at least 1 or 2 more seasons.
Yeah, I think overall, like it comes down to he's kind of going where he should. Not a guy, like I want exposure to him, obviously, in best ball. I don't think you need to be drafting a quarterback this early in regular drafts. If he drops, obviously, I think, getting the number 1 quarterback, below ADP, I have no problem with it, but he's not somebody I'm kind of building my draft plan around just because, as UI and JJ talked about, there's kind of arbitrage opportunities up and down the board at quarterback, including guys with that rushing ability. It's not going to be Josh Allen level necessarily, but he beat out Brady by about a point, just over a point, in terms of finishing as a quarterback 1 last year. So it wasn't like a massive spread like the way sometimes you see Christian McCaffrey beat out like all the other running backs were like 5 points per game. So right. Allen did it by about 1.3. So I feel comfortable enough kind of just going with the flow of the draft and not, upending things, trying to take a quarterback that early, even though Allen, like you said, he's deserving of going where he's.
Yeah. I like what you just said, go with the flow. I think quarterback is a position you just let come to you, because you kept having an arbitrage version of every quarterback in the top 5 later on. So that's why you have to think about it is don't reach for guys. You have to think, oh, if I don't get this guy, I can get this guy who has similar upside later on. And then you eventually end up taking Daniel Jones and Jared Goff. But I just think that quarterback, it's so easy. And then we have to remember, you have the when we're talking about 1 QB season long formats, you have the biggest safety net out of all the positions in the waiver wire. Every given week, you're going to have these QBs that were ranking, 13 to 20. One of those guys might be inside of my top 12 in the weekly rankings. So it's very easy to stream the position. You don't really have that luxury at any other position. But I will say when it comes to 2 QB league super flex, everything's flipped around and QB is extremely valuable. And then you're going to be taking a guy like Josh Allen in the first round. So it depends on the format.
Absolutely. All right, let's jump to Mahomes. He's QB2. He actually has a higher pass prop than Allen at 46.50. His touchdowns are 34.5. His interceptions 10.5. Also, the rushing prop is 325 yards. So respecting still pretty good numbers. But I wanted to ask you, I think it's interesting that, you mentioned Mahomes as your QB2. I actually have Justin Herbert as my QB2. And the reason is, last season, Mahomes and Herbert essentially put up equal numbers. Like Herbert had just over 5,000 yards, 38 touchdowns, 15 picks. Mahomes had just over 4,800 yards, 37 touchdowns, and 13 picks. And so they basically put up the same numbers, but Mahomes lost one of the best wide receivers in the game. Yep. Herbert didn't lose anybody. If anything, maybe, you see Josh Palmer get a little better, take over that number 3 spot. Yeah. from Jalen Guyton. So, yeah, and now that, now Herbert's 2 years deep into the league, we have a little more sample to where we're not just kind of projecting off one season. I know Mahomes still has more, but generally for quarterbacks, you're not going back too long because you have a bigger sample more recently. So I actually do have Herbert slightly ahead. So just curious as to kind of what you think of that and why you still have Mahomes as number 2 and how you expect him to play this year and the numbers to be without Tyreek.
Yeah, no, that's certainly fair. I think that's why I have Josh Allen in the tier all by himself, because I think you can argue Mahomes, Herbert, Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray, like you can kind of shuffle those guys in any type of order and I won't really complain about it. So yeah, I have Mahomes just slightly ahead of Herbert, but I take your point. And losing Tyreek Hill is definitely going to hurt Mahomes' upside. Mahomes is still arguably the best QB in the game. I mean, he's entering his prime at 27. But he's losing Tyreek Hill. We have to factor in that Travis Kelsey, he's turning 33 this year. He's probably on the decline phase of his career, which is still better than all other tight ends, but still, Kelsey's on the decline. I did like what they did. They had to do what they had to do with Tyreek, but I like the fact that they did bring in multiple receivers to potentially replace his value. So, Juju Smith-Schuster, I still like him. MVS, I think he can be a good deep threat. And Sky Moore, I think he's an exciting rookie to have. So I think Mahomes still has enough weapons to put up QB2 numbers. So I think his ceiling is a bit lower. That's why I wouldn't take him where he is. He's going 35th overall. That is 20 spots higher than I would have it. So while I'm ranking him as the QB2, I think he's just going way too high overall. I think people are still drafting him based on name value. Like I said, he's still a legit quarterback, but just losing Tyreek Hill is just massive in terms of lowering his ceiling.
Yeah, it's the opportunity cost, right? Like it's nothing against Mahomes. He's one of the best quarterbacks ever already. But it's just his different when you don't have a guy that can go for like 250 and 4 touchdowns in the first half. Losing that guy is a pretty big deal.
And when you're talking about Justin Herbert, he had to learn the new scheme under Joe Lombardi last year. So he's going to be having continuity, already knowing the scheme. He has the same weapons around him. He still has Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, and, Austin Eckler at his disposal. So if a guy like Josh Palmer steps up as a good number 3 wide receiver, great, but he doesn't need that. He already has talent around him. Plus, I think, Gerald Everett, we like Jared Cook, but Gerald Everett has some upside. He's in the prime of his career, so he could have a breakout season. There's just a lot to like surrounding Herbert, and Herbert as a talent is amazing. And he does have some sneaky rushing upside as well when he wants to tap into that. So absolutely. I think you can make the case that, Herbert and Mahomes are essentially tied at QB2 going into the season.
Yeah. And I just like the fact that, it's never a huge chance that a wide receiver is going to miss a ton of time. They're not like running backs, but Tyreek Hill missing from Patrick Mahomes is like, even if Herbert lost Keenan Allen, it's a little bit different just because Keenan Allen's not averaging like 20, like 15 yards a catch. It would be rough, but it wouldn't, it's not quite the same numbers wise as, losing a guy like Tyreek Hill. Like Allen is still one of the best receivers in the league. Obviously we had that, Friedman and I had that legendary argument a few years ago, him versus AJ Green, and only one of those guys is still standing. But I mean, you look at even last year against the Giants, Keenan Allen was out one game. Herbert still goes 23 of 31, 275, 3 touchdowns, no picks. He could still, it's him kind of making everyone else better except Keenan Allen, I think. But yeah, there's not, when you have a number one that's averaging, 11 yards a catch, it's a little easier than a number one that's up there. So I do like Justin Herbert over Mahomes this year. No issue with Mahomes on the field. It's, I think it's just for fantasy, the opportunity cost is too great. And I'm not running out to draft Herbert either.
Right. I was going to ask.
Yeah. They're just, I don't really want a quarterback that early.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of why we also, wanted to get the late round episode with JJ out first. Cause it's like these top quarterbacks, it's like every year we say the same thing. We're like, I mean, I guess they're fine being drafted where they are, but I'm not really running out to draft them. So
yeah, I guess the only downside I can come up with for Herbert is this defense could take a huge leap forward. I mean, they have Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack, JC Jackson. If Derwin James stays healthy, I mean, they could be playing with the lead a ton, and they won't have to pass as much. But either way, he's in the AFC West, so they're going to be in some shootouts. But my only concern is this Chargers team might be pretty good, so they might have to dial back the passing a bit. But there's no other downside to Herbert.
Yeah, and their best running back is like probably a better pass catcher than he is a runner, so they could just use that. Herbert still gets the credit, but no, point taken. I just thought it was interesting that they had similar stats, and everyone's still kind of going Mahomes over Herbert.
They're definitely closer than the public realizes. Yeah, for sure.
And Herbert, he's going QB3, about 37th overall, by the way. But we talked about him, so let's jump to Lamar Jackson. He's in the QB4 spot in ADP, going 49th overall. So started a 5th round in your conventional 12-team league. First of all, I mean, just the loss of Marquise Brown. When that happened, I know Brown wasn't really. His numbers didn't really match the player, I guess is what I'll say. I know he dropped like the 3 long touchdown last year against Detroit, but in general, I mean, he wasn't a guy. He's another guy. Like he wasn't necessarily putting up those 15 yards a catch type of seasons. So I mean, how did you kind of account for his departure in terms of Lamar Jackson's passing stats? Did they change much at all in terms of your projections?
Oh yeah. I lowered them quite a bit. And I just think the Ravens are going to be more run heavy this year. When you look at, adjusted games lost due to injury last year, the Ravens were just far and away the worst team in terms of injury luck. So I think they're going to be a lot better this year, play with more positive game scripts. So Lamar won't have to throw as much. They get both running backs that missed last season healthy this year with J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards. So if anything, I think Lamar's going to run more, so that his fantasy value is still intact. I still think he's a top 4 quarterback. He has a very high floor, but I think losing Marquise Brown does. I don't think we're ever going to see Lamar's 2019 type of upside. So I rather wait and get Jaylen Hurts, who just got AJ Brown a couple rounds later. So I think we can still bank on Lamar to run it a ton. But yeah, just looking behind Rashad Bateman, and we have to assume Rashad Bateman's going to make a pretty big year 2 leap, but behind Bateman, I mean, it's pretty nasty. He doesn't really have a number 2 weapon behind Bateman. So if either Bateman or Mark Andrews misses time, that's going to really hurt Lamar Jackson. So I think that trading away Marquise Brown definitely lowers Lamar's ceiling.
Hey, don't disrespect James Prochet like that.
We got that bet going.
I know. What is it? 49.5 receptions?
We have, you have over, I have under 49.5. Let's do it.
Somebody's got to catch balls in this offense.
I'm surprised that I thought they were maybe going to sign a Julio guy. Maybe Will Fuller just sit on the IR all year, but I'm surprised they haven't signed a free agent wide receiver. So it really does look like they're going this season with Duvernay and Prochet and Tylan Wallace battling it out for the number 2.
Yeah, I mean, everyone knows you got to let the Bucs poach every good free agent first, and then you choose from the leftovers. So maybe they get like a Manny Sanders or
that would like, to be honest, that would definitely help Lamar in my projections.
John Brown, don't get John Brown.
Oh man, is he still around?
He's somewhere. I don't think he's in too good a playing shape these days.
2 years? Yeah, that's tough.
He just hasn't seemed to be able to crack a cracked the roster lately.
Cole Beasley, where the hell is he? There's some decent free agents out there. Let's just put it that way.
Cole Beasley seems like another guy that's going to sign with Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
But it's tough. I think it's a situation where, the running's always going to be there. So I don't think you can always be so concerned about Lamar, though. For the first time, we started to see him that running really catch up to him last year, and he missed games. Yep. So I think, should he still be in that number 4 spot? I think so, but I think we have to have tempered expectations. I mean, even if you look at his season long props, 3,650 yards passing, 24.5 touchdowns. That's nothing crazy through the air, but he's still, 900 rushing yards, 6.5 rushing touchdowns. I think the touchdowns are a little high, but I do expect him to run for, in that 8,000-9,000 yard range.
How many projected passing yards do you have for him?
Let's see.
Because I have 3,590, so I'm just barely under the prop.
I have 36.23.
Okay.
So I'm about 25 yards under the prop. You're about what, 75 or something, 60.
Yeah. But I will say he does have a lower floor. Just given how much he runs, he is more prone to injury compared to like a Brady that's just going to stay in the pocket the entire time. And I will say we've talked about it, but it was interesting to see how when Tyler Huntley was filling in for Lamar Jackson, actually helped guys like Marquise Brown and Mark Andrews. So that was interesting to note. Where if Lamar does go down, they still have Tyler Huntley there. Guys like Bateman and Mark Andrews should be able to sustain fantasy value.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think what was going on with Huntley. I think it was a reflection of not just Lamar Jackson, but also Greg Roman. Like I've given Greg Roman a lot of credit. I've been impressed with what he's done over the years with guys like Tyrod Taylor.
Yeah.
I believe I'm not sure if I think he had Kaepernick at one point too. I think he was there in San Francisco.
Yeah, I think it was briefly.
Yeah. But he's always done a good job, especially with these building offenses around these mobile quarterbacks. However, last year I didn't think it was his best work. I thought defenses at one point in the year, I think it was around that maybe week 6, 7, that Miami game, if you remember on, it was a primetime game, may have been a Thursday night game, but I just remember Miami like 0 blitzing, and the Ravens had no answer. And that's not supposed to be the case. Like, you're not supposed to be able to play man coverage against a running quarterback like Lamar Jackson that efficiently. And so now the receiving core is worse. So, I mean, you got to hope that Greg Roman figures something out. And I know part of it is just, Lamar's limitations as a passer as well. But, I think the league's kind of catching on to Lamar a little bit. And it kind of bears out if you look at his statistics, since that MVP year, his touchdown rate went from 9% to 6.9% in 2020 to 4.2% last year. So dropping massively each year. And then the interception rate, 1.5% in his MVP season, 2.4% in 2020, 3.4% last year. So there's a clear just downward trend in his production. His QBR 83 to 67 to 50 over the last 3 years. So I think it's like cliche to say, but defenses are starting to figure out not how to stop him in this offense, but contain it at least. So.
Yeah, well, to be fair, last year they did lose their starting running back and the backup, and they're rotating guys in like Latavius Murray, Le'Veon Bell, Javonte Freeman, like all the classics, right? So
I'm not buying that. I'm not buying that. This offense is built on running the ball. They're supposed to be able to, just cycle in different backs. The back is not supposed to matter.
Well, yeah,
Lamar is the back.
I would agree with that, but I think it does help having a guy like J.K. Dobbins. Even though I'm not drafting him any of my drafts, I still like him as a talent. So I think getting a guy like that back in an extreme run-heavy offense will certainly help.
J.K. Dobbins had the pump fake. Like, he was the guy that we thought we were going to get like the good news on. And then he's like, yeah, I'll certainly be ready for week 1. And then, of course, he's one of the players that does land on the PUP. And we don't know when he's coming off. So hopefully J.K. gets healthy. But
we don't want to see Mike Davis as a starting running back. We do not want to see that.
Free Tyler Beatty. but yeah, I just think the league's catching on him. I don't think it was I could be wrong on that, but from what I saw, I just think these defenses starting to figure it out. We also got to remember, and this is kind of getting into it with kind of the projection side a little more, but any numbers you look at from 2 years ago, you have to keep in mind that the league averages across the board for offense were up because of the pandemic, and there were no fans in the stands, and that really helped the offense. And so, like, across the board, like, passing numbers decreased last year, whether it was touchdown rate went down, interception rate went up, passing yards per game went down about 12 yards or so. So just little things like that also to keep in mind if you're like expecting a guy to bounce back to, let's say, 2020 levels. The league averages across the board are a little higher. So that's another thing. But Kyler, I mean, anything been going on with Kyler lately? I haven't been
he got paid, right?
My, did he ever? So here's my question to you.
Yeah.
Over under 4.5 hours of film per week for Kyler Murray in 2022.
Under.
Independent study, that is.
Under, because he's required for 4 hours, right? So he'll stop right at 4. So under.
Oh, man. Kyler's the clock out. He's the guy that clocks out on the dot.
Yeah, why not? Right. I'm assuming the fact that they had to put that in means they are expecting to get the bare minimum. So I'm gonna. What do I get for 4 exactly? Like 2-1 odds?
Yeah. Like you get if he does 4 exactly every week, you get like plus. You got like 50-1 if he's on the dot for.
Oh yeah, no, I'm gonna take as soon as he meets his requirement, he's done.
I mean,
he's got to go spend that money, right?
I just think that's a wild contract incentive. I mean, although I do see both sides, because I see, one side is saying, like, especially by making it public, like, it's going to be a distraction. But at the same time, I think, like, there was no way they couldn't pay him, right? So it was just kind of a subtle way to hold him accountable, like, because everyone is going to ask about it, right? It's like, and if he does have bad games, the last thing he's going to want to do is answer to, like, how much film you've been watching. So, like, it might work. It just might work.
Yeah.
But as far as his on the field, fantasy performance and projections, he's a QB5. He's going 59th overall on average. Although I don't quite understand how, because I'm using a Fantasy Pros number and they say he's going 59th, but Burrow's 53, but Burrow's QB6. So I don't know.
Yeah, I noticed that too.
Error in their numbers or what? If it's, I think it may be supposed to be flip-flopped, but either way, Kyler Murray's going in the middle of the 5th round. Where does he kind of fit into your draft plan?
Yeah, so I mean, he's the cheapest of this, tier 2 QBs who have, QB1 overall upside. So I think that if he were to fall far enough, I would consider him. Either way, I mean, we got Jaylen Hurts coming up. I'd rather just wait for him. But we have yet to see him put it all together for 16, 17 games. So he needs to prove it. Usually we get, all-star Kyler in the first half, and then he falls apart in the second half. He's going to be without DeAndre Hopkins in the first 6 games, so that's going to sting a bit. But once he returns, I mean, he's going to have the best supporting cast in his career with Marquise Brown there. We just talked about Lamar losing Marquise Brown. Kyler gets Marquise Brown. He'll have Zach Ertz the entire season, which I think will help. Plus, having a guy like Marquise Brown potentially adding a vertical threat to this offense where it was much needed can open things up for, like Zach Ertz over the middle of the field, or even, potential year 2 breakout, Rondale Moore. So I think if everything goes well, I think Kyler's going to have the best supporting cast. We already know he has massive rushing upside. So I kind of like him out of all these tier 2 guys, just considering he's the cheapest. I think he's offering the most value.
And how do you think that is going to affect him? Just the loss of Hopkins for those first 6 games. I mean, Hopkins was already, I will say this, like, Hopkins is great, and I think his Madden rating is a little too high. I think it was like 96. No disrespect to the man. Yeah. Like, Hopkins has been nasty doing this for 8 years now. But I thought, just looking at some of his underlying metrics, that's how, I know you and I, we like to look at like the per route statistics and things like that. There was some drop off. So I don't think he's at his peak anymore. But that's obviously a big loss. How do you think that affects Kyler for those first 6 weeks?
Yeah, I think it'll definitely affect him. Like I said, once he comes back, he's going to have an all-star cast around him. I think he has enough weapons around him to survive the first 6 games. Plus, Kyler has rushing upside, right? So if people aren't open, he could just scramble and, run for it. So I think the fact that they brought in Marquise Brown really helps the fact that they're going to be without Hopkins. And like you said, I think Hopkins, he's definitely in the decline phase of his career. I think you mentioned maybe he's aware of that. That's why he started popping PEDs. But yeah, I think just Hopkins is still, an elite talent. So having a guy like that around will make everybody else around him better. So that's why I can't wait for Hopkins to return, because I still believe in a guy like Rondale Moore. I don't know if I would draft him in fantasy, but certainly having a gadget player like that can, help Kyler long term. So I just like the way this offense is setting up. But yeah, the first 6 weeks, it's going to be a little bit tougher, but he has enough talent there to survive. And I didn't even mention it, but AJ Green is still there, I guess.
Is he?
So yeah, he's still standing.
Really?
You said he's not standing. He's standing, but it might be more of a lean. But
he's
the first 6 weeks, maybe we can squeeze something out of AJ Green, and then he won't be needed as much. But that, like I said, they just have a ton of talent there, even without Hopkins. So I think he should be okay the first six weeks.
I think I had a dream that AJ Green did not make this roster. But I don't know. I don't, for some reason in my head, AJ Green's just not on the team. But I will say this, like, you already gave kind of the pros for Kyler Murray, so I'll give the cons so we can just arbitrage our way to Jared Goff.
Wow.
No, I mean, I just got to knock down all these quarterbacks, so we can.
Well, I think like Daniel Jones would be the arbitrage.
I know.
Jared Goff is completely different.
Joking. I did just draft Daniel Jones and on best ball team at like 4 a.m. and I was pretty happy about it. I got Daniel Jones and Justin Fields. But with that said, last year, Kyler Murray in the games without DeAndre Hopkins, his passing yards per game dropped from 278 to 251. His passing touchdowns per game dropped from 2 per game to 1.25 per game. His yards per attempt dropped from 8.1 to 6.0. So pretty big drop off there. Yeah. And then if you just look back, Tyler started in 2019, Hopkins came in 2020. So he has about a pretty equal sample of playing with Hopkins and without. If you look at his rookie year and then the time he missed last year, 26 games with Hopkins, he averages 260 passing yards per game, 1.8 touchdowns, and 7.6 yards per attempt. In 20 games without Hopkins, those dropped to just 236 yards per game, 1.3 passing touchdowns per game, and 6.8 yards per attempt. So there is a pretty massive drop off with and without Hopkins. And I know, yes, they got Marquise Brown to kind of quell some of that. But remember, Marquise Brown is really replacing Christian Kirk, who played extremely well and has been there all of Kyler's time and played really well last year. So, like, I do think there is going to be some drop off in Kyler's numbers, especially for those first 6 weeks. I don't think it's going to be enough to like knock him out of that top 8 or anything like that. But, just in terms of like we talked about with Josh Allen, like I think you really want everything to be in place to spend a pick this high on quarterback. So like if I could start poking holes in these guys at the top, and then there's players like a Jaylen Hurts, like you keep mentioning, who I love as well, going a little bit later with a similar profile. I think that's how you kind of have to build your draft plan around. Okay, in an ideal scenario, while I respect Josh Allen, I respect Lamar, I respect Kyler, I can get a Jaylen Hurts. If I miss on a Jaylen Hurts, I can get a Trey Lance. If I miss on Trey Lance, hey, it's not the end of the world. Like I can still get a Justin Fields. I can, if I could punt it completely and just stream it. And you mentioned you usually get like QB8, on average streaming for a full season. So it's like once you get, once you drop a little past Kyler, now you're almost at that streaming level where if things don't go right. So it's just, it's one of those things where nothing against Kyler necessarily, except the fact that I do think his passing numbers will struggle. And I mean, I don't love the fact that he just got paid and that we just found out he doesn't watch film. Like it's not my favorite piece of information. If I'm drafting a quarterback round, I will say that as well. So That's kind of how.
And you have to look at the players that you're passing up that are going around Kyler Murray, and you have guys like Amon-Ra St. Brown, AJ Dillon, who I love. So you're just passing up players in that range that I would like to build my team around. Whereas Jalen Hurts, you have guys like, I know you like him, but Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
I don't like Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Miles Sanders. Okay, good.
I just spent a whole props episode betting their unders.
I would much rather have.
Don't foist Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
I would much rather have like an AJ Dillon and Jalen Hurts than I would Miles Sanders and Kyler Murray. So you just have to factor in the guys that you're passing up also when you're taking these quarterbacks pretty early.
All right, Joe Burrow. I think, the big question for me is, can he be consistent? Because it was like half the time, or not half the time, but he's like throwing for 400 yards. But other times it's like, a quiet 270. So what do you think as far as his consistency? Because he's now kind of broken into these, like he's the guy that we're taking if we don't get one of these premier mobile quarterbacks, or at least that the market is taking. Like I have Jaylen Hurts QB6. I think you do as well. So, but Joe Burrow is the QB6 across the land. So what do you think is consistency?
I think he can be consistent. I think having, arguably the most improved offensive line heading into the season should absolutely help with that consistency. And, towards the end of last year, you said, he was throwing 300, 400. He was doing that every game towards the end of last season. Almost every metric starting in week 16, I think it was, heading into the playoffs. He was the number one quarterback in almost every metric I was looking at. That's why I was backing the Bengals all the way through the playoffs. So I think he has definitely turned the corner, and he's established himself as one of the elite quarterbacks in the league already. So I think that we're going to see more consistency this year. He's, he has one of the best wide receiver trios in the game. And I think Hayden Hurst, I think he could be an upgrade over CJ Uzomah. We have to remember Hurst was a first-round talent. He was non-existent last year because he was backing up a generational talent in Kyle Pitts. So I just love the surrounding talent around Burrow. That's why, I agree. I'm probably not drafting him QB6. That's where I'm taking Jalen Hurts. But I think the way you invest in Joe Burrow is through the pass catchers. So I'm all about, drafting Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, obviously, Tyler Boyd later on, and then Hayden Hurst in, deeper leagues. So I think you still want to invest in Burrow, but not, by taking him early in the draft at QB6.
Yeah, that's how I'm kind of I feel like Joe Burrow is at that top tier of, after you get past the mobile quarterbacks, but we can still get Jalen Hurts. There's still Trey Lance, even now that we have a little more clarity of Kyle Shanahan straight up saying this is his team. This is Jimmy G he's speaking out about him in past tense, which is pretty savage. So Burrow's still at that top of that. I think it's fair to take him over Dak Prescott, who's the QB7 in ADP, going 65th overall. But I just don't really see taking him over Hurts necessarily, just because I think you do want that mobile ability. And you could even make an argument for Trey Lance. It's just that we haven't seen him, but haven't seen him do it for a season.
You could also get Trey Lance way later.
That's the point. That's my point. But I mean, even in just raw rankings, if you want to put, a little projection, it doesn't take much for these guys that are going to run, to kind of surpass some of these guys that aren't really running a lot. That is what I'm trying to say. But certainly I think Burrow deserves to go over Prescott. And the season-long props kind of bear that out. Burrow's at 4,450 with 34.5 touchdowns. Prescott 4,350 with 31.5 touchdowns. And I do have a little bit of a split there too. But Dak is the QB7. I think, especially with this Julio Jones news, I would put Brady above Dak at this point. What are you thinking of Dak this year? He lost Cooper, lost Wilson. We'll see what's up with Gallup. They do have Jalen Tolbert coming in as a rookie, but what are your thoughts on Prescott?
Yeah, so I already had Brady ahead of Dak, so the Julio Jones is nice, but Brady's already ahead of him, and same thing with Jalen Hurts. So I'm not going to be taking Dak with either Hurts or Brady on the board, which is most drafts. So I think losing Amari Cooper definitely hurts. This is sort of the downfall of that, awful contract that they signed Zeke to. And Michael Gallup, he might miss week 1. We don't know yet. So, being without Cooper or Gallup week 1 is going to sting a bit. Either way, this offense should be still one of the top in the NFL. And Dak will still, he's probably a lock to be a top 10 quarterback, but still, I just don't see the reason to draft him this high, especially ever since his, season-ending injury in 2020. He's definitely lost that rushing upside that, I used to like that he had. We can count on him to get 4 to 5 rushing touchdowns this season. I think that's gone. I don't think we're going to see that version of Dak again. So he does lack that ceiling, and not having Cooper there will certainly hurt. But I'm excited to see CeeDee Lamb be the unquestioned number 1 target in this offense. So that's going to help a bit. But yeah, just you can't lose a guy like Amari Cooper and, be able to replace him. So I think, Dak's ceiling definitely takes a hit from that.
Yeah, career low 3.0 attempts per game rushing, career low 9.1 yards per game rushing, career low 3.0 yards per attempt rushing, and career low 1 rushing touchdown in 16 games started for Dallas last year. So that's a little bit of an issue. That's why Dak still a great quarterback, but fair to expect a little bit of regression without Cooper, without potentially Gallup, integrating a rookie who's not as talented as like CeeDee Lamb, obviously. Although I do like Tolbert. Right. I think that's a sleeper pick if in your best ball leagues. Okay. Jaylen Hurts. This is now
the main event.
Now we're here. This is what the podcast is about. I mean, you mentioned guys with QB1 overall upside. Jaylen Hurts, I think he has it. I mean, it would probably take an injury or two at the top there, but certainly profile-wise, he's got it. And then now he's got AJ Brown. So, I mean, does that mean the volume is going to go? Because, like, that's what I did, I think. I don't know about you, but when I saw that AJ Brown acquisition, I was like, okay, like, they're going to be a little bit more pass-heavy now. Like, is that kind of the thought you had too?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's definitely a sign. If it's not, then I don't know what they're doing. But either way, it's going to help Hurts' efficiency tremendously. Look what happened with Ryan Tannehill when he got AJ Brown. So I just love it. I remember we were poking holes in Kyler Murray. I still love Kyler Murray in the top 5, but we can poke holes in his fantasy value. I can't do it with Jaylen Hurts. There's nothing about him that I can poke holes about other than the occasional bad pass, but we don't care about that in fantasy. Last year, without AJ Brown, he finished as a top 12 quarterback 73% of his starts, which is the highest rate of all quarterbacks. And that's before he gets AJ Brown. So the ceiling for him is massive. You mentioned, he has QB1 overall upside. I think if we were setting a market on, who will finish as QB1, the favorite would obviously be Josh Allen, and number 2 has to be Jaylen Hurts. Mahomes, Herbert, especially, Lamar, Kyler, they probably have a higher floor. Like they're more likely to finish top 5 than Hurts, but Hurts definitely has the highest ceiling out of those guys. So, I love the fact that you can potentially get the QB1 overall at QB8, I think he's going right now. It's too good to pass up. And by getting him QB8 at that part in the draft, that's when your roster is starting to get established. You probably have a couple running backs, a couple receivers. Like, I love the roster construction that I get when I target Hurts around QB8.
Yeah, and to be clear, like, because we want these episodes to kind of, be able to carry people, especially at quarterback, through draft season. And so, like, even if he was QB6, like, if ADP kind of sharpened up a little bit, like, you would have no problem with him at QB6, right?
Oh, no. Yeah, no, I would take him. Like, in a vacuum, I would take him QB 3 or 4 in a vacuum. But the fact that you don't have to, that's why I wait until around QB6. You can usually tell when it's time to take Jaylen Hurts. And we've talked about AJ Brown, but we have to remember Devontae Smith is entering year 2. I think he's gonna be amazing as a complementary receiver.
Yeah.
And then we don't have, I love Zach Ertz, but I like Dallas Goedert even more. So just having Dallas Goedert as the week 1 starting tight end, I think also helps Hurts upside. So just, I love the talent around Hurts. And yeah, he's not the best passing quarterback, but he just has that massive rushing upside that will go with, I think, an improved, supporting cast. The sky's the limit for him.
And just so to put it into context with some numbers, because, I think most people would say, okay, Lamar Jackson, QB4, he has that QB1 overall upside, right? Like if you just look forget. Oh, sorry.
I mean, over Hurts though.
No. This is what I'm getting at. I was gonna say, most people, the market puts Lamar Jackson at QB4, right?
Yeah.
Jaylen Hurts in the season long prop market, which I think similar to our projections as well. But Jaylen Hurts, same number of passing yards, same number of total touchdowns, with more rushing. So actually more points in fantasy projected for Jaylen Hurts with his touchdowns than Lamar. The only fewer interceptions. The only difference is Lamar has about 175 projected rushing yards more. So it's just about a point per game. But remember, Hurts his props would suggest kind of more points throughout the other aspects. So there's really no difference, is what I'm trying to say, between Lamar Jackson and Jaylen Hurts just in terms of the projections now. And most people would argue that Lamar Jackson at QB4 has that QB1 upside. So that's what I'm saying is like, why not Jaylen Hurts? It's not really a difference.
You're preaching to the choir here. And I will say, Hurts has 2 more projected rushing touchdowns, which are more valuable.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Yes.
And Lamar Jackson 6.5 rushing touchdowns is too high. It's too damn high, right?
Yeah.
You tack the under. So I'm just saying the 6.5 projected touchdowns for Lamar on the ground is too high. It should be closer to, 5.5.
Exactly. So yeah, that's why we like Jaylen Hurts here. And that's why this is where we're starting to get into, if we're not going to completely punt the quarterback position, I think this is the sweet spot. It's like, once you start getting QB8 Jaylen Hurts, QB9 Tom Brady, love him. I mean, I would say this, like, it looked a little shaky when Gronk retired and Godwin, we didn't know if he was going to be ready. Now all of a sudden, it's like because like Russell Gage like can kind of fill in terms of like, he's not Gronk, but he can still get like 3-4 catches a game, which is what Gronk was doing. Now you have Julio Jones in that third spot, who like, it's like you're really, all you're gonna do is maybe create a more wide open offense where there's even less tight ends on the field, which means Brady's yards per completion could go up. So like, I'm right back on the Brady train. I think you could make an argument for him over Joe Burrow as well. Definitely over. He should be going over Dak. I think. Yeah. Bar none, he should be going over Dak. You could make an argument that he should be going over Burrow. I mean, the volume should still be there. The offense could be even more wide open. And he beat out Burrow last year. It's like, so getting Brady at QB9, if Hurts is off the board, like that's the one pocket passer that I still would legitimately be excited to get where he's going. Potential MVP candidate, even at age 45. So I'm loving me some Tom Brady with this Julio Jones addition.
And it sounds promising that Chris Godwin might be ready for week 1. That was a concern that I had too.
That's big.
A lot of good news for Brady. The hidden concern that I have is Ali Marpet retired. So the offensive line might be, not as good as last year. People might overlook that a bit, but either way, the Julio addition was great. Although I'm not going to lie, he did look, a little bit washed last year. So I'm just going to throw that out there. But I think just being, the number 3 or number 4 receiver on a team, to have Julio Jones as the number 3 or number 4 is massive. So I love the depth at receiver. I saw you made a tweet yesterday that they only ran 4 wide, like 1% of the time last year?
1.8 snaps. I put it in snaps just so people can understand it a little better.
Yeah.
1.8 snaps. The league leader is Arizona, close to 10 snaps per game. So like 4 wide is something you can't, like 4 or 5. It's hard to do consistently in the NFL, but like there's the upside to get to like 9-10 snaps per game of 4 wide. And if they want to, and I can't imagine as long as those top 4 are healthy, because remember, Brady like recruited Russell Gage to come here. Like this is not Russell Gage. They think highly of Russell Gage.
I do too.
I
love Russell Gage,
especially as your number 4. Like
he's like a quiet, mellow Antonio Brown. Just he's gonna get it done,
Yeah.
And they lost Gronk, OJ Howard, so probably less 2 tight end sets, I would imagine. So I would love for them to run more 4 wide formations.
Yeah. And like, let's say I will say this about Julio. I'm usually the first guy to call out these big washed old dudes at wide receiver.
Yeah,
I don't think he's quite washed. He's obviously in the decline phase. Like I think that's a better way to put it. Like his targets per route were 19% last year, career low. But Have you seen that Man in the Arena, Tom Brady show by any chance? It's
some of it.
So there's one episode where they interview Randy Moss. It's the year they got Moss, the year the Giants beat him in the Super Bowl and they had the near perfect season. But Randy Moss was like, yo, like even I thought I was washed. And then I teamed up with Tom Brady.
True.
So it's like,
that's
it's like don't underestimate the fact that Julio Jones is gonna be the number, like he was the number 2 target for Tennessee last year, and AJ Brown was in and out of the lineup. Like he's gonna be the number 3 in the defensive priority list.
Yeah.
On when you're defending Tampa Bay. This is the best coverage he's ever gonna have with the best quarterback he's ever gonna have. So like I'm not running out to draft Julio Jones like, you know, as like a wide receiver 2 or anything like that. But I will say, like, in terms of real football and its impact on Tom Brady's efficiency, like it's still a great addition. It's not quite Antonio Brown, but it's it's the best case scenario in terms of the wide receivers on the market Tampa Bay could have gotten, especially when you consider like Odell is probably going to miss half the year, if not more. So like, yeah, I think this is Tom Brady. I mean, what else does the guy have to do? Like, he never slows down. He was 2B2 last year.
He's like, still got it at, what was he turning 45 this year?
Yeah,
it's incredible.
like,
but I have seen no signs of decline in Brady. But I will say with Julio, you have to be careful because it goes pretty fast. I mean, AJ Green is the butt of every analyst joke these days. And I mean, he was, you know, elite just a few seasons ago. So it can go
fast.
Saw that coming. Yeah, to be fair, you did. But.
I'm just saying, like, personally, I'm always like, if anyone who's followed me, you know, since I kind of came into the game, maybe, you know, 10 or so years ago, like, I always like, it was like Andre Johnson, like all these guys, it's like, you can just kind of tell. I could be wrong, or Julio could just fall off really quickly this year, but I just don't see the same kind of drop off with Julio. I think it was more to do, obviously the injuries are going to be a concern. Like, you know, but
got to stay on the field.
Right. But I don't see like AJ Green like played and was just terrible. Like, I just think Julio is just kind of like, as long as he's in the game, getting single coverage, getting passes from Tom Brady, like I think he'll be fine, at least for this year. I think he's got it in him.
Yeah, I thought it was a great ad. What do you think of Kyle Rudolph?
I'm not buying. I know this is not a tight end pod, but I'm not buying.
But this is all part of Tom Brady. Like, I am worried about their tight end depth still.
I'm not at all. I think Kyle Rudolph was also kind of the best case scenario they could have gotten. He's not great, but best guy to kind of, because like they needed a blocking guy more so to replace Gronk. Like at this stage, I think Cameron Brate's the better receiver, and I'm not buying that Kyle Rudolph just is the Gronk role and like Cameron Brate's the number 2 again. Like, I think Cameron Brate's still going to get more routes than Kyle Rudolph. So I like it. I think you still Cam Brate 20 red zone targets last year. They trust him in the red zone. Kyle Rudolph can catch a pass, the odd pass here or there if he's in the game. And you have a very solid depth at receiving. And then Leonard Fournette proved his worth as a pass catcher last year as well. So, I mean, and now you don't have Ronald Jones in there. So, like, that you're always going to have a pass catcher on the field if you need it. Like, I think things are set up well for Brady once again. I maybe the offensive line takes a tiny step back, but not enough. Brady's just too quick getting rid of the ball for like an interior lineman's departure to ruin the offense.
That is the kind of pressure that does throw Brady up the middle. But I think long term it's not the end of the world. But I'm just saying people are overlooking it just a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing. There's a lot of good. The good outweighs the bad.
Yes,
I think it's
love Brady at QB9 right now.
QB9,
that's a steal. He's a fallback plan. If Hurts is off the board and Brady's there, he's a backup plan.
Yeah, I'll take the last, like, you know, rush mobile quarterback of the top 8, and if as a consolation prize, I'll take the guy who finishes QB2 without running at all. Like, I'll do that. Yeah, Russell Wilson, QB10. My question for you with him is, you mentioned it with Dak, but are we seeing the same thing with Russ? Career low 3.1 carries per game last year. Career low 13.1 rushing yards per game last year. Product of the injury, or are we also seeing kind of, especially now that Russ has like actually gotten an injury and might have been like shell shocked by that? Like, do we see the rushing production? Is it gone for good?
Well, Russ had a finger injury, right? So
yeah, but like you don't want to get hit.
Dak, yeah, no, like Dak, that was a career-changing injury. Same thing with Burrow. I think Burrow had some sneaky rushing upside, but after he tore his ACL, that's pretty much gone. I don't think Russ was necessarily an injury that changed it. He's just getting old, man. It sucks getting old. So now that he's 33, we typically see quarterbacks, they dial it back when it comes to running the football. So I just think he'd rather just throw it than roll out and take a hit. I think that's more of a personal choice. And I would expect that to continue. I don't think we're going to see him have a resurgence running the ball, especially since I think that, he's leaving Seattle where he had 2 elite pass catchers in Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf. I don't know if going to Denver is really a big upgrade for him at all. They certainly have more depth at receiver with Sutton, Judy, Patrick, Hamler. But I don't really see this as an upgrade at all going to Denver. If anything, this is obviously a massive, massive upgrade for the Broncos themselves and the pass catchers. But in terms of, Russell's raw projections, it's pretty much the same as last year. I don't think we're going to throw the ball a ton more than Seattle did. So this is more of a lateral move for Wilson, where it's, he's elevating everybody around him. But it just in terms of passing and rushing production, I have it relatively the same as last year. How about you?
Yeah, he's it's interesting that people think this is an upgrade where you're going to like Jerry Jeudy, who's been a constant disappointment. Cortland Sutton, who went from like amazing to injured to horrible in the span of like 2 years. And Tim Patrick, who's that dude? Who's that dude? But
yeah, we can't shit on Tim Patrick.
That's that dude. No, and like listen, I think Sutton rebounds. I think Judy's a good player, but there's some concerns. It's not, you can't just take for granted that he's getting like an upgrade in supporting cast. Right. The team is better, obviously, but yeah, it is a lateral move. Russell Wilson's going to QB10. I think this is where the market kind of doesn't know what to do. I'll say this. I said the same thing, a similar thing in 2018, and it turned out really well. It was like once the like kind of shoo-ins were off the board and you started getting to like, I think it was like after the top 8 that year were off the board, I was like, yeah, Patrick Mahomes needs to be the 9th one. I know we haven't seen him play all but one start at the time, but like it just needs to be Patrick Mahomes because like everyone else is just like, you could make a case for Russell Wilson QB10. You could make a case for Russell Wilson QB15. Like, it was the same thing in 2018. I forget the names, but that's how I feel about Trey Lance at this point. It's like after Hurts and Brady are off the board, it's like, why am I not just going with Trey Lance, who's going to run the ball and has Deebo Samuel and George Kittle and I, like, you know what I mean? Like, why am I kind of guess which of Russell Wilson or Matthew Stafford or Aaron Rodgers, even with no receivers, is going to like pop in, should be that like QB10 instead of taking the guy that like could finish QB4 in it. You know what I mean? Because like that's how I feel about it at this point. So like that, I'm not really excited about Russell Wilson. I don't really have too much to say about him. It's like QB10, that's fine. The rank, it's fine. Maybe 11 because I would probably jump Lance ahead of everyone after Brady. But yeah, nothing. That it's just like the difference between QB10 and QB like 15 even is not that great, especially if like we talked about Derek Carr. If he has a great year with his supporting cast, which is better than Russ's, and they're both not running, there's not going to be a massive difference there either. Obviously Wilson is a much more efficient quarterback, has been, but that's my point. It's like that doesn't necessarily equate into a ton of more fantasy production per game. Wilson could end up in that streaming territory.
And you made a good point there where I think at this point, I think I would draft Trey Lance, but you don't have to because he goes way later. But when it comes to just, we talk about this at tight end once like the first 7 or 8 are off the board. When you spend this much draft capital to lock in Russell Wilson, you're going to hang on to him all season. Mm-hmm. He's going to be your starter every week, but there's going to be some weeks where, depending on who's on your waiver wire, it could be like a Derek Carr, a Kirk Cousins, a Tua, or a Justin Fields. They're going to have weeks where they have a better matchup and they're projected higher than Russell Wilson. And you're stuck. You just have to start Russell Wilson, where you could just, at that point, punt the QB position, wait later to get a Trey Lance who actually has the upside to be projected inside the top 8, no matter what the matchup is. So I agree. I think when you get in this range, Russell Wilson, Matthew Stafford, Aaron Rodgers, it's you're better off just waiting as opposed to spending enough draft capital where you're kind of like pigeonholing yourself into these guys to start every week when that might not be the best plan long term anyway.
Yeah, I mean, and I will say this, they should have some shootouts. I mean, they're in the division with the Raiders, Chargers, and Chiefs. So like they should have some shootouts, but the Chargers still have a good D. So it's like it's tough to sell Wilson over just waiting for a guy like Trey Lance. Same thing, Matthew Stafford at QB 11. I mean, it's not really much to say with him. I mean, I just think he's kind of, we know what we're gonna get out of him. He's gonna be pretty efficient in that offense with McVay, but he doesn't run. And so he could finish QB 9 or 10. He could finish QB 14 or 15. It just depends who stays healthy, and who has that like kind of spiked year touchdown wise. So, I mean, any thoughts on Stafford beyond that?
Yeah. I mean, I have no, really argument taking him QB 11 other than what I just laid out. But I think, he loses Robert Woods and Odell Beckham, but he never had both of them at the same time. Mm-hmm. And you could argue that Allen Robinson could be an upgrade over either one. Obviously, Robinson was a huge disappointment last season. You could blame that on just the Matt Nagy and the horrible offense itself. But he's turning 29 this year, so he still has a year or two of upside. So he could be an upgrade. Either way, Stafford's an okay pick. And, it kind of reminds me of when I was talking about Tom Brady, the second season in an offense after spending his entire career somewhere, similar to Peyton Manning. Stafford's kind of in the same boat. He has one season in this new offense under his belt. This year, he's going to have even more chemistry with the players around him, with the scheme. So he could have an even better season, believe it or not. So I just think, I think a lot of people are just saying he's due for regression. I don't know about that. Like, he's more comfortable in this offense. We could see a better season. So I'm okay drafting him QB 11. That's not part of my plan necessarily, but certainly he does offer a really super high floor QB 11.
Yeah, I think he's still, just because of the non-rushing production, he's still in that streamer conversation for me. And I mean, JJ made a really good point, which I do think it's hard to argue he's not in line for some regression, just because 41 of the Rams' 51 offensive touchdowns were thrown by Stafford. And that's just, I mean, that's over 80%. That's really hard to sustain year over year. So, it's just, again, I just wouldn't draft him over Trey Lance. And
right.
I think at this point, Aaron Rodgers, I would say the same thing. QB 12, 93rd overall. Listen, love Aaron, proved me wrong, 2 straight MVP years. But no Devontae Adams. That was more than a third of his production was Devontae Adams. And Adams is gone. Sammy Watkins may not work out, that looks like. Christian Watson's already on the PUP list. I mean, I am really just not digging the situation. And it just like that, combined with the fact that like you're not going to get rushing upside. And we've seen Aaron Rodgers. Yes, he's had the MVP years these last 2 years. That was, Nathaniel Hackett was there. He's gone. He's the offensive coordinator. Adams is gone. We've also seen Rodgers have some very average, pedestrian seasons. And that was even with Devontae Adams. So like, I can't make the argument, to draft Aaron Rodgers where he's, even at QB 12.
Right. I just think his upside's capped, and obviously losing Devontae Adams hurts, but we have to remember he also lost Marquez Valdes-Scantling, who's his trusted deep threat. I mean, that does.
No, wait. Let me cut you off.
What?
Trusted is a little strong. Trusted.
Oh, absolutely. He's
Trusted that fluctuates. Anyone who's watched the Packers will know that fluctuates. Like, he trusts him, but then he doesn't. And then he trusts him, and then he doesn't.
You can't be a consistent deep threat. That's the whole point.
He still gets the eyes.
When Rodgers is able to get the team to draw off sides and he just chucks it deep, that's MVS. I don't know if he's going to have that with anybody, especially if Sammy Watkins is hurt all the time. But I will say, after the Con Air walk into training camp, I did bump his passing yards up 2 yards again.
That's fair. That is fair.
He was my QB 13. I was QB 12 from that walk up. But either way, we are absolutely drafting Trey Lance before him.
Yeah. So I'll put it this way: Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray, Jaylen Hurts. Those should be. I think those are the top 6. Brady should be 7. Burrow should be 8. Prescott 9, and then we're drafting Trey Lance.
I have a little different order, but we have the same strategy, right?
Yeah.
Like,
well, yeah, I actually have Herbert second, Mahomes. Yeah.
Jaylen Hurts, Tom Brady, Trey Lance. I think those three guys.
Yeah.
Right. Those are the three guys to target.
Yeah. We're not doing Burrow and Prescott over Hurts. We're not doing
we're investing in their pass catchers, just not them specifically.
Yeah. Like we're not where we differ from ADP is we're not doing Burrow and Prescott over Hurts and Brady. And
we're not doing it.
And we're not doing Russell Wilson, Matthew Stafford, or Aaron Rodgers over Trey Lance. We're just not. It just doesn't make sense in terms of trying to win your league versus just trying to go with like a name who's you're comfortable with.
We're not trying to finish second.
Yeah, we're not trying to finish second. We're trying to finish first. So that's quarterbacks. That's between this episode and, like I said, if you have not checked out our late round quarterback episode with JJ Zacharyson, it is great. It's up now. Be sure to check that out. We'll keep these coming all preseason long. You can find Sean on Twitter at @the_oddsmaker. You can find me on Twitter at Chris Raybon. You can find us at those same handles in the free award-winning Action Network app. Go to actionnetwork.com. Our fantasy rankings for season long are up with our projections as well. And don't forget to leave us a review if you like the episode. We'll do another winner on the first episode of next week. We'll be hitting you with 2 episodes a week now, by the way, if you guys haven't noticed. So there's that. Let's get this money.